Hi and welcome to my temporary spray booth where I'm testing out the FujiSpray and the Apollo HVLP spray systems. I've had a nice hot cup of tea, so I'm ready to go. Now you might have remembered that just before Christmas I decided I needed a spray system for a project I was working on, and it just so happened that the FujiSpray was on a special promotion, so I thought it would do everything I wanted and I bought it. And I was going to do just a review on that to tell you how I got along with it, but the opportunity arose to also test out its competitor, the Apollo Pro Spray, and these two units are priced very similar indeed in the UK, so I would expect the performance to be very similar as well. So we'll find out about that. So let me just walk you around the machines to begin with. The FujiSpray, obviously you can see it's a bit smaller. It's about 3/4 the size of the Apollo. Weight wise as well, it's about 3/4 the weight. Don't pay too much consideration to that. They're both still very portable machines, and they're both still small enough to store in a small cupboard if you want to put them away between jobs. Turning our attention to the two spray guns, these guns are virtually identical. The cup on the FujiSpray is a external 2-point bayonet fitting, and the cup on the Apollo is an internal 3-point bayonet fitting. Both do a good job of sealing. Both manufacturers also offer a range of air caps and needle valve sets, and they also offer smaller cups for the sort of work that I do, where I'm not wanting to decant huge amounts of finish at a time. We can also see here that both units have an attachment for holding the gun when it's off the hose. The Apollo has a coupling system here, so it will lock the gun on, which makes it a little bit safer if you're walking around with the unit together, whereas the FujiSpray is sitting just on a rod. I can't see either of those would be a problem. There's a big difference between the hoses of these two. The FujiSpray is obviously a material reinforced hose, and it's quite easy to squeeze, whereas the Apollo, I'm not entirely sure, but I certainly can't squeeze it. I think it might be metal reinforced. Not a problem in my workshop. I'm not going to be running over it with anything heavy that's going to block the air supply, but if you're looking at this video and perhaps thinking about automotive spraying, then maybe if your hose is laid out, if somebody drives a car over it, you're going to suddenly lose a lot of your air if you're using the Fuji system, whereas I think you could drive a car over the Apollo system without actually squeezing the hose. Looking at the couplings to the actual machine itself are quite different. Both screw-on couplers, both good quality. The Apollo system comes with a Jubilee fitted, push-fit Jubilee fitted end on it. I wouldn't have perhaps paid that much attention, but I have had it explained that the reason for that is happens quite often that a sprayer will try to overreach the hose's length and pull the hose off. If you pull the hose off this system, because it's a Jubilee coupling, you can put it back together, retighten it very quickly and get on with the job. The FujiSpray system, I think is a crimped system. If I pull this strain relief on here back, we can see it's got a crimped end on it. Also got this strain relief, which it needs because of the flexible tube. If you were to pull the tube out of this fixing, then you would really have a problem putting it back together. At the gun end, the Fuji system has a quick coupler, and it also has an inline air valve. Now the manual says something about using that to adjust the way you're spraying. I'm not an experienced enough sprayer to know whether that's useful or not, but it does mean that you can cut off the air supply if you want to swap out cups on the fly. The Apollo system, again, got a quick coupler, but there's no valve on there. Both systems come with filters. The Fuji's got a filter at both ends, which can be taken out and washed out a few times. As long as it doesn't get thoroughly blocked, you can keep using those filters. The Apollo system has a couple of filter cartridges, which I think are more efficient. They can't be washed out, they have to be replaced when they're clogged. Final thing to mention on the units is the power switch. On the Apollo, it's up the top next to the handle, and it's actually got a waterproof cover on it. The Fuji is down the side of the unit here, and as soon as you become accustomed to the machines, you better find those switches very easily without even looking. Okay, before I get started with spraying, I'm just going to do a comparison of the noise levels. Both of the systems are set an equal distance away from the camera and its microphone. I'm just going to turn them on one at a time, and you'll get an idea of which one's louder or whether they're the same. Okay, so here we go. First of all, the Apollo. And then the Fuji. Well, that's enough talking about it. I'm going to do some spraying now after I've had another cup of tea, and then come back and tell you about the results. Something I was a little concerned about were the filters, and this is the filter from the Fuji. You can obviously see the grid from where it goes in its little metal box, but on the inside you can also see that dust is getting through here, and whether you can see or not is possible. I can see right through it, so that doesn't fill me with a great deal of confidence in its ability to stop all the dust from getting into the turbine. Taking a look at the enclosure where the filter goes, clearly there's dust on the outside, but the filter slips up in here, and it's quite clear for me to see, and probably you, that there's actually dust and particulates that have got through the filter and are on the internal grid inside there, so potentially getting into the turbine and actually through the air hose through into the spray gun and ending up on your finish. In contrast, the filter from the Apollo, there's no sign of anything on the inside of that, so actually I think the Apollo wins out on the filter test. The main test really was spraying this large piece of oak veneered MDF. That tested the ability to spray a large area easily, how wide a fan I could get from the gun, how quickly I could cover that sort of area, and I have to say it was the same from both systems. Plenty of coverage, very easy to use. So it's the end of day 2 and the end of the review. I say it's the end of the day, that's why my cup of tea has changed to a nice Captain Morgan's rum, and before I take too much of that, I better just tell you my conclusions. Doing these samples in as close to equal conditions as I could. So I sprayed first with one gun, changed immediately to the second one, and so within a couple of minutes I'd sprayed both samples. I was using a water-based acrylic, so having sprayed first with one, then the atmosphere would be slightly more humid. So there's very slight variations, but temperature, pressure in the workshop exactly the same. Drying times exactly the same. Surface prep, sanding in between finishes, exactly the same. Now I've taken some time to look closely at all these samples and I really can't tell any significant difference between them. Both systems have done a really good job and I'd be happy to use either of them in my workshop. I will be picking one of them to continue on in the workshop and the other one will be retired. Which one I choose really is coming down to things other than the performance of spraying. And it really comes down to what I think will be a better machine in the long term, in terms of the amount of maintenance it might need and the lifespan that it might have. And so I'm actually going to be picking the Apollo. I think the filters protect the system a little bit better. I couldn't see any evidence of any particulates getting through the filter, whereas I could with the FujiSpray. And I think looking after the machine, it's much better if you can try and keep any dust and particles out of the turbines. Also, it just feels that little bit heavier, that little bit more robust. Now, as I said, both systems did produce really good results, so whichever one you might plump for, if you're looking for a spray system, I'm sure you'll be very happy. Cheerio and cheers. Please take a moment to like, comment and subscribe, and follow me on social media for extra photos and videos from the workshop. Cheerio.